Hi everyone, this is iBookBinding podcast. This is Payal. This is my co-host Stepan. Today will be one of our shorter episodes. We're planning to talk about European book markets, of which Stepan is a big connoisseur. He'll tell us about the best ones, the best one to be particular, and the worst ones, which I assume will be Berlin, right?
Well, I'm not sure about Berlin. I still think that some of book markets I saw in Moscow were much worse. Not everyone considers Moscow to be a European city, though, so it's
Despite it being the biggest one.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd really like to talk about best and worst and to rank them in any way, but I definitely wanted to discuss some of the things I saw in different book markets and my experience with them and how I felt about the I don't know, not traditions, but how the things are done in different places. And
So it won't be one of those top 7 book markets. Number 6 will surprise you especially.
no, definitely. Firstly, I'm very biased, so I would definitely say that the best European book market, old books market, is in the Hague. But you can guess that one of the reasons is that it's only 30 minutes away from me, and I can go there every Thursday when there is no lockdown. So I'm definitely very biased on that matter.
I thought we could start with Moscow's book markets because they were your first experience of book markets. Tell me what was the norm back here and what surprised you when you moved to Europe? What was different?
I'm not sure that Moscow book markets were my first experience because firstly we need to differentiate because there are book markets where new books are presented, and Moscow has several of them which are really impressive and have a good representation there, and you can find a lot of new and maybe some old books. You can meet with authors, you can talk with them, discuss some issues and so on. And I don't know, there is a non-fiction book market, there is some book market on VDNH right now. As far as I remember, there is a book market on the Red Square, and they held it this year, even despite it was a period of total lockdown. So these book markets seem to me top-notch events, and I really like them. But today we wanted to speak about old books markets, antique book markets, and my experience with them in Moscow was pretty limited. And I think the first large event of that sort was organized by the current mayor after we left Moscow. So I was a visitor to Moscow when it first happened, and I was really absolutely disappointed with this event because it seemed like there was a party order to create a book market, and some bureaucrat decided he needs to to tell every antique bookseller in Moscow, you have to be there, otherwise we will send tax authorities to check your books. And I don't mean the old books, but the bookkeepers' books. So they did, and the choice of books was absolutely random. But what was worse is that like 90% of sellers that were working there didn't know a thing about the books they were selling. So they just put there some students who didn't know anything about books, book history, old books, like anything connected to books. And only a couple of sellers there definitely were the owners of the shops or something like that, and they knew their stuff, and they were ready to answer me, give me some recommendations or something like that. So this was disappointed, but it was a year ago or so, I don't remember, I think, or a year and a half ago. And I think they had a second book market after that, and I don't know how it went. So Maybe it's much better now. I don't know.
But what about the flea markets? Surely they have bookstalls.
You mean in Moscow and in Russia, or
Yeah.
well, I don't know, because I almost never went to flea markets in Moscow, and I have not much experience with that. And I've been to several flea markets in Moscow and Moscow area, but it's mostly like, some old crap and samovars and not really much anything related to books. So yeah, there are when we walked around Moscow with you, there are some spots where I think since Soviet times, some people, some enthusiasts sell old books like from a stall, and this looks completely unofficial, and it looks like they're selling stuff only until the next policeman comes and tells them to take their possessions and walk away. And sometimes you can definitely find some gems in some gems for some really nice money being sold by these people. And I really remember them selling books since my childhood, and I'm sure your experience is the same.
Me too. I recently met an old guy like 500 meters from the Red Square next to the, Moscow's biggest library, and he seemed vaguely familiar. And then it hit me. I bought one of my first old books from him 20 years ago.
Yeah,
With my first earned money, I bought an old book about architecture from
yeah,
1930s, and he's
yeah,
still there. He's
yeah,
still doing his thing. Then,
yeah,
that's kind of nice. But again, you're absolutely right. It's very random. You never know what you find there. It's
yeah,
like what they could find in this particular week.
yeah,
You never form a buyer-seller attachment. It's just a random guys selling random books.
yeah,
So okay,
yeah, yeah. That's
so
true.
so
And the what I wanted to add is that in my opinion, the best book markets are the most diverse book markets, where you can. It's not like, for example, when it was before the pandemic and before the lockdowns, I went to The Hague every Thursday, and it was a sort of routine for me. This doesn't mean that every Thursday I bought anything good. This doesn't mean even that every Thursday I bought a book, because there were definitely some days, rarely, but still, there were definitely some days when I went home without anything in my backpack. And but sometimes there were days when I bought like 20, 30, 40 books, and it was so they were so heavy that I sometimes I wasn't sure that I will get to my home with all that new stuff. But this is what makes the market in The Hague so good, because there are different sellers there who have their own characters and approach to books. And for example, I know this seller, I like in 99% of cases, I wouldn't find anything that interests me because his scope is a bit different, or his approach to choosing books is a bit different, or his price range is a bit different. But at least I know there is a difference between these people and their approach to book selling, and I can always find something from a different seller there. In Moscow, returning to this book market in Moscow, it was like almost all the sellers had just all the same stock of, I don't know, collections of stories by different authors that were published and republished in million copies in Soviet times. And nobody needs these books today. Nobody cares about them. But they just wanted to fill the shelves and to make an illusion of a bookmark. So the goal of this event was absolutely different.
how is this bookselling community in The Hague formed? From what I gathered talking to you, these are sometimes dynasties. So they've been working there for years and years and years. This is an old event. You need to buy a license.
Yeah, yeah.
How does it work?
I don't know exactly how long the history of this book market is, but from my talks with different booksellers, I know that it started quite a long time ago. Some of the booksellers came much later than the book market began. Of course, it can be definitely much later if it began, I don't know, a century ago, because I don't know when it started. But then they told me that it was much larger, like 20 or 30 or 40 years ago. So it shrunk. And this is what happens with all of book markets in the Netherlands, as far as I understand. And I guess it's the same tendency. There is the same tendency in the whole Europe and maybe in the whole world, because book selling and book reading was declining for many years. There were some changes in the last year. I think it was last year, for the first time in a row of like 6 or 8 years, sales of paper books increased compared to the previous year, and it was a bit of a strange and happy development, but I'm not sure if it will go this way further. So yeah,
you're saying it's diminished in size, but still it's a big market, right?
yeah,
How big are we
yeah.
talking? How many stalls?
So in the Hague there were, because lockdowns changed everything, and usually on summer there were something like 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 10 to 15 booksellers, and this means that it is like something like 20 to 30 to 40 2-meter long stalls. So that's a lot. That's a big book market, and it was larger before. And as for the dynasties, I'm not sure about all of the booksellers I know from The Hague, because I know for sure that 2 of them weren't parts of any bookselling dynasties. One of them started selling books quite by chance. He told me that it was a fun story, because he was traveling somewhere in South America, and he's a great fan of sheet music, and he was visiting some bookseller and saw a collection of old sheet music that was pretty rare and expensive, and it was sold for peanuts, and he bought it. And firstly he had to re-export it from South America back to the Netherlands. And then he sold part of it, but decided to keep another part of it, because he's not only a bookseller but also a collector. And there is always a conflict between being a bookseller and being a collector. And that was a starting point for him, as far as I understand.
So there was this one thing you said that interested me. You're implying that
only one. I was talking for minutes.
But this one stood out. You said that book markets are declining because people are reading less books. But from what I know about book collectors, they do not generally read most of the books they buy.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to ask. Do people still come to these places to buy a book to read? Or is it mostly to collect them and to have the joy of owning them?
Well, I'm not an expert on that matter, because I
Which is, by the way, why we should interview one of those.
Yeah, and that's in the plans, by the way. I discussed that with a couple of them, and they probably will agree in the end. And of course, we discussed this with some of the sellers, and definitely some of people buy books for collections, and they do not plan to read them. And some of books definitely buy books to read them, and some of the sellers sell, for example, fiction books and such, and cheap fiction books. And most of the people who buy them to read, because that's not really a collectible stuff. Well, that depends on collection. If you collect cheap pulp books, then cheap pulp books is what you're looking for to build your collection, and maybe not to read, but mostly these books are bought for reading. And that was one of the things that one of the sellers told me recently, that a little bit of short story before that. Some of the sellers, they sell on different markets on different days. Because, for example, the market in The Hague is on Thursdays, the market in Amsterdam is on Fridays, and probably some other day as well. The market in Rotterdam, I think it's on Tuesdays. So, for example, there is a seller who sells in Rotterdam and in The Hague. There is another couple of different sellers who sell in Amsterdam and in The Hague. There is a seller who sells right in front of my door in Leiden on Saturdays, and then on Fridays he goes to Amsterdam. And I asked one of the sellers how he feels the market goes after all the tourists went away because of the lockdown. And he told me, like, okay, I'm very happy, because the tourists weren't my main audience anyway, because mostly the people who buy books from me are the locals or the people who work around the markets. And for example, in the case of The Hague, in autumn, the book market is located right next to several ministerial buildings. So he told me that a lot of ministry officials come to book market to buy books on Thursdays, but now everybody is working from home, and he lost a lot of his regulars because of the lockdown. So it wasn't even the most troubling thing that the market was closed, because when it opened, it still couldn't go to its full force, because the people who are working around the market in the city, they are not working in the office right now. It's not an easy time. But on the other hand, many of these booksellers have also some presence online, and they sell books through, I don't know, iBooks, biblio.com, and other resources dedicated to selling books. So it's not like they're absolutely broke, but it's not easy for them. So go online and buy some old books from antique booksellers. Don't go to Amazon and don't buy new books from Amazon. Support old booksellers. I'd like to say thanks to every person who watched this video, and if you want something to add, or you have any topics for us to discuss next time, please leave a comment below. Thanks to our patrons on Patreon. If you like these videos, and if you like what iBookBinding does, you can support iBookBinding with a little bit of money. Pledges start with $1 or €1 per month. With higher pledges, you will get some nice stuff like digitized books. All the money coming from our patrons now goes to cover the editing of these videos. So it is spent on good stuff. And see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.